Crimson Desert isn't out yet, but from what we've seen, it's pure chaos in the best way. Think brutal boss fights, wild traversal, and yes, swinging onto a giant crab like medieval Spider-Man. This isn't your average RPG, it's a brawl, a climb, and a survival test all rolled into one. And you're gonna want to see just how far it goes. Let me start with this. Crimson Desert is not out yet. Everything you're about to hear is based on hands-on previews, official trailers, and gameplay segments released by the developers. The game is scheduled to launch in 2025, and even at this stage, it's already showing signs of being a real disruptor in the action RPG space. What we've seen so far paints a picture of a game that's not afraid to challenge conventions, both in combat and in world design. The vision is clear. Crimson Desert is not trying to follow, it's trying to lead. It's building something wild, vast, and layered, a playground of violence, beauty, and choice. And the more we look, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just another fantasy RPG, it's a bold experiment in how you experience adventure, danger, and growth. There's a spirit of ambition driving everything we've seen. From the smallest enemy encounters to the grand boss arenas, Crimson Desert doesn't want to do what other RPGs have done. It wants to surprise you, to catch you off guard, to push you out of your comfort zone and dare you to adapt. This isn't a game about getting comfortable. It's a game about getting challenged and loving it. It's also about taking systems you think you understand and twisting them just enough to make you question your instincts. It invites risk, it demands experimentation, and it rewards those who embrace its learning curve. Crimson Desert seeks not just to be played, but to be deciphered, interpreted, and remastered through each new encounter. That hunger for discovery, both external and internal, might be the game's most powerful weapon. What makes Crimson Desert different isn't just the gorgeous visuals or its vast open world. It's the combat, and trust me, it's not your typical hack and slash. If you're going in expecting something like God of War or Elden Ring, you're going to be thrown off. In those games, you react to patterns, studying attack cycles and exploiting safe windows. Crimson Desert flips that. Here, you're expected to create your own openings, not wait for them. It's a more active, aggressive system that rewards strategic offense rather than passive defense. And it isn't about perfection, it's about improvisation. It's about dealing with failure mid-fight and scrambling your way to victory through grit, instinct, and timing. The developers seem to have built the combat around reading the battlefield rather than reading the boss. A single enemy can surprise you with timing changes, combo extensions, or environmental reactions. And while Cliff has access to a full suite of crowd control, mobility, and heavy-hitting attacks, none of them work as win buttons. Instead, you build flow. You construct the fight as you go. It's like a conversation where the opponent is always trying to cut you off mid-sentence. It doesn't hold your hand, it pushes you forward, demanding that you become more than just a button masher. Every move counts. The more you experiment with your moveset, the more creative and deadly you become. It's a system where timing, spacing, and tactical thinking matter more than just raw power. The result? Fights that feel like duels, not dances, intense, ugly, desperate, and deeply satisfying. And in the heat of those duels, you begin to feel the DNA of the game take over. It's not about dominating, it's about surviving, and surviving smart. You play as Cliff, a rugged mercenary navigating a brutal, fragmented medieval world. What stood out most in the gameplay demo was how different each enemy encounter felt. There's no universal solution to a fight. Take the Reed Devil, a fast, light enemy weak to crowd control, versus the Staglord, a heavily armored brute that shrugs off light attacks. The game pushes you to think tactically. Use the wrong move and you'll get punished hard. Enemies feel like puzzles, each one with a different shape, and only the right approach will fit. Some battles are like solving a riddle with steel, and that keeps the experience fresh and rewarding. You'll fail, learn, adapt, and return stronger. That loop, defeat, adjust, overcome, is woven into the core of Crimson Desert's identity. You won't survive by memorizing, you'll survive by adapting. And it's this design philosophy that extends even beyond combat. Whether it's solving environmental traversal or managing limited resources, the game continuously tests your awareness. Even basic enemy mobs might surprise you with behavior shifts, ambush tactics, or elemental effects that require fast rethinking. Certain enemies adapt to repeated moves, almost baiting you into lazy habits, only to punish you for them. Boss battles are the real showcase. One of the most intense shown so far is Hexmarie, a teleporting witch who floods the arena with minions and pools of dark energy. If you're not constantly moving, you're dead. The fight plays out like a mix of Elden Ring's chaos and Final Fantasy XVI's cinematic flair. It's not just about raw strength, it's about battlefield control and mobility. There's even a fully choreographed cinematic sequence that triggers once you defeat her, adding a touch of drama and payoff you'd expect from a high-budget RPG. But it's not just Hexmarie. Other bosses feature changing rules mid-fight, phase shifts, environmental hazards, or summonable threats that warp your approach completely. Boss fights are designed not just as tests of skill, but as spectacles, part puzzle, part theater, part brawl. They're the crescendo to your journey through each zone, and they demand your full attention. You'll remember them not only for their challenge, but for the narrative rhythm they bring. They're chapters, not just checkpoints. Some even evolve based on how you fought previous enemies, reflecting a kind of memory system that tailors the encounter slightly to your past playstyle. Traversal is another standout feature. Cliff can climb almost anything, similar to the climbing systems in games like Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or Immortals Phoenix Rising. It's all tied to a stamina meter that creates tension without outright limiting freedom. And if you do fall, no worries, Cliff's got a glide cloak that turns plummeting into soaring. The system even lets you pick up speed midair, giving off a vibe more like flying than falling. And the way Traversal integrates with exploration is what makes it truly shine. It's not just how you get somewhere, it's how you discover something you weren't even looking for. The verticality, the sense of momentum, it adds a whole new layer to exploration and combat strategy alike. But what elevates Traversal even further is how it's built into the world. How cliffs hide secrets, how towers beckon, how danger is sometimes only visible from a height. The world is not just a backdrop, it's an active participant in your journey. You'll encounter narrow cliffside battles, rooftops with hidden chests, collapsing ruins, and multi-level dungeons where falling or climbing becomes part of the threat. In one case, a climbable structure becomes a puzzle in itself, with shifting ledges and a rotating mechanism that changes the entire path. Combine that traversal with the massive scale of the world, and exploration becomes meaningful. Landmarks like distant castles aren't just for show, they're explorable, reachable, and packed with content. Crimson Desert trades checklist fatigue for player-driven discovery. Instead of chasing icons, you're following curiosity. Hidden dungeons, unexpected enemies, and strange encounters feel earned, not just triggered by a waypoint. Some areas are entirely missable. Some quests begin with a whisper or a glimpse from a cliffside. The sense of mystery, of stumbling upon something terrifying or beautiful without a prompt, is a rare feeling in modern open-world games. This isn't content delivery, it's world building through absence and uncertainty. And then there's Queen Stone Bat Crab, a giant boss encounter that leans into stamina-based platforming. You need to climb her armored body, wait for the right moment, and strike her weak spots before she throws you off. It's tense and methodical, more Shadow of the Colossus than Diablo. The encounter even uses a grappling tool reminiscent of Spider-Man's web-slinging to navigate tight arcs mid-fight. You're not just fighting the boss, you're wrestling gravity, momentum, and timing all at once. Add to that the puzzle of surviving long enough to reach the final weak point, and you've got one of the most layered encounters we've seen in a fantasy RPG. It's the kind of boss you dream about days later, not just because of its difficulty, but because of its creativity. It reflects the game's deeper design, that raw spectacle means nothing if not paired with agency. You have to earn every second of triumph. And once you land that final hit, you don't just feel victorious, you feel changed. Combat overall is driven by stamina. Every special move costs energy, but there are no cooldowns. This means you can chain attacks as long as you're careful. It's more dynamic than traditional action RPGs and closer in spirit to something like Monster Hunter. It's not about spamming your strongest move, it's about flow. You're watching the enemy, reacting, finding the beat between their attacks, and diving in to capitalize on small windows. Enemies punish overconfidence, and recovery windows are earned, not given. The stamina system forces you to pace yourself, to think several moves ahead. That's what makes combat so satisfying. When you win, you don't feel lucky, you feel earned. This emphasis on pacing and positioning lends the game a weight that many action titles lack. Combined with the variety of weapon types, ranged options, and reactive AI, the system feels flexible without sacrificing difficulty. You fight with intention and you feel it in every swing. Not everything is perfect, though. In hectic fights, especially with swarms of enemies and flashy abilities going off at once, it's easy to lose track of what's happening. Visual noise is a recurring problem, and one that many action RPGs struggle with. Also, the healing system, currently tied to the same button as equipping weapons, is far from ideal. Misclicks and high-stakes moments could cost you a fight. These might sound like small things, but when every second counts, they can break immersion. The good news, these are problems that can be fixed, and hopefully will be before release. Crimson Desert's core mechanics are solid, they just need the polish to truly shine. Despite these issues, Crimson Desert has the potential to be something special. It blends the open-world discovery of The Witcher 3, the demanding combat of Soulsborne titles, and the cinematic flair of Final Fantasy. But more than that, it has an identity. It doesn't just borrow, it builds, it rethinks, it dares. And in an industry full of safe baits, that kind of creative risk is worth celebrating. Crimson Desert could be a landmark release, not because it tries to do everything, but because what it does choose to do, it commits to completely. It's a world you want to lose yourself in. A world that feels alive, but more importantly, a world that watches back. It's not about completing everything. It's about engaging with something that feels unknowable, dangerous, and strangely personal. If the full release lives up to the depth of this demo, Crimson Desert might not just be another RPG, it could be a defining game of 2025. It's bold, beautiful, brutal, and brimming with ideas. It's the kind of game that invites obsession, that rewards persistence, that leaves a mark. And if it delivers on its promise, it won't just compete with the best, it will inspire the next generation. We'll look back and say, this is when the genre evolved. So sharpen your blade, master your stamina. Learn to move like a hunter, strike like a warrior, and explore like a wanderer. Because this world isn't just here to be saved. It's here to challenge you, change you, and maybe, if you're good enough, let you leave your mark. Subscribe for more deep dives, hit like if you're hyped for Crimson Desert. And tell us in the comments, which boss fight from any RPG still haunts you to this day.